Hey there, we're live. I'm Douglas Ferguson, and today I'm with Madeline Guinazzo, and we're going to talk about facilitation. Welcome, Madison, Madeline.
Good to be here, Doug.
Excellent, excellent. So we were just chatting a bit about shared values, and that's something I've talked about with Linda Baker about how values are so important in facilitation, and we were unpacking this interesting dynamic, which you pointed out that it's important to not critique someone's values or not support their values. But then there's also this concept of, as a facilitator, we have to stay true to our values and not compromise them.
Yeah.
And so what is that fine line between supporting other people's values versus having those boundaries around not allowing ours to be trampled on?
Oh, you said one of my magic words, boundaries.
Mm,
So for me, and for those of you who don't know you, my kind of bread and butter is consent and boundaries.
mhm,
So you can't really have one without the other. But this really brings up for me this idea of consent because uh, I think, right, are my values in alignment with what's being asked of me in this
mm,
situation? And essentially, for me, I think of facilitation as a service. I think anything that we do professionally is from a spirit of service, right? We're here to serve. And is it serving? But then, of course, the values come down to the boundaries. Am I in service to something that is in alignment with my value? Am I in my integrity around that?
mm.
So I kind of need to know beforehand before I get into that, like what's what's expected of me here, and can I serve that in alignment with my own values? But values, there's different levels of values. So with participants, like, somebody and I may have completely different political perspectives, or points of view, but we still love our children. We
Mm.
still love, our families. We still like there are certain universal values of being human that are important to touch into, and sort of kind of need to take that on faith a
Yeah,
lot.
well, I think in addition to these what might be universal values, there can be shared values amongst a group. And if you understand those things, it can be very powerful because you can unite folks that may not seem like they're on the same page or could ever possibly understand each other.
Exactly. And that's really important to bring into the room. Um, and that just that humanity in general, which brings up the fact that, in values, we all get scared.
Mm.
We're vulnerable. Like we all get angry when, you know, and can we laugh about it like this even?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. In a lot of the work that we do, collaboration is the pinnacle. That's really what we strive for, is to have very high levels of collaboration, very efficient collaboration. And and we hear that word bantered around a lot to the point where it almost loses some of its meaning. And it almost sounds absurd to think that some people might not value collaboration, but I certainly have met people in my work that they prefer to go into the cave and work by themselves. The notion of getting in a meeting or getting on a Zoom or getting in front of a whiteboard and working it out with someone else is not something they value or enjoy. And I think
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand the people we're working with and the people that are in the room, so that we can we can kind of basically support them best we can.
Absolutely. And this is so earlier we were talking about, right, what I say and how people hear it. And sometimes there's a gap, and words are fascinating. You can unpack a word. So that word collaboration, that's a big word. Like you say collaboration and you think one thing, I hear collaboration and I hear, the blind men and the elephant. There's this story
Yes.
about these five blind men. They're all feeling on an elephant and they're like, wait a minute, it's like this. No, an elephant is totally like this. Collaboration is like that. And what you just said, like, I'm an introvert, right? I love collaboration. I love collaboration. To me, that means, working on a shared goal with a variety of people. But I may not enjoy being in a room with a whiteboard. right?
Mm,
Like, but I'm still collaborating, right? I'm still like, I want to be part of the team, but then again, that's, what are the unique skills and happy spot? What's the sweet spot for everybody in the
yeah,
team? Hopefully you have a team of diversity where people have different sweet spots so you can collaborate effectively, but it's going to look different for each person. So that's where we get to kind of take a word like that and zoom out and, take a broader perspective and go, okay, how do you like it collaborating?
that's
Oh,
right. And clean language has a nice toolkit for unpacking things like that.
hmm,
And maybe the best Jedi question is, what kind of collaboration? Just
oh,
simply
yeah.
having folks to attempt to define it.
Mhm.
Um, it's also fun to think about the inverse. Like what kind of collaboration is it not?
Oh, yeah, right. So it's as helpful to know what you don't like as it is
Hmm.
to know what you do like.
Yeah, like because it's like tolerance is great, and we want to support people, but there's a paradox there, right? Because where do we draw the lines around what is not okay, and what are we not going to support? And I think that was something that I was thinking about as you were sharing this notion of, we can attack other people's for their values, and at the same time, if they so diametrically oppose our values, there's some point where we had to draw the line. But I think the issue is that so many people treat it like binary, yes, no, on, off. That's like, I think it's more nuanced than that, and just because people are on the other side of the aisle or different doesn't mean that it's like mutually exclusive and that we can't come to the table and find those shared values.
And, I'll say again, I think that's one of the most essential skills of our time. I feel like that's the cutting edge of where we're at right now collectively, is to say, how do we bridge those um, apparent oppositions? And, that binary is a big pitfall. It's
Mm,
a
it is a trap.
trap.
And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we were talking earlier around I statements and how much you love I statements. And so let's unpack that a little bit. Why are they so important, and why are you
Mhm.
so fond of them?
Well, again, it goes back to boundaries, right? An I statement is knowing the difference between what I'm feeling over here and what I think you're feeling,
Hmm.
right? But what are you actually feeling, right? So there's that projection, and we can get into assumptions and things like that. But I statements, and you said something really lovely that I wanted to follow up on, before we came on air, which is about checking in with ourselves as a
Mm,
facilitator. Where am I at? Like, what's going on? We talk about as facilitators what's going on in the room, but there's that what's going on in the room, right? Like,
yeah,
before I walk in
and
and
we're a big antenna. So we're sensing stuff about the room, and if we don't reflect that out, then and it's incongruent with how other people are sensing the room, then that's not gonna allow us to connect.
but so where am I at when I come in? Am I still, agitated by the thing my mom said last
Mm,
night, or just before? Am I still irritated about something that I couldn't find my favorite shoes? Or like, where, just doing that little personal inventory. And another thing we talk about is holding space. That's
mhm,
that's sort of facilitator lingo. Um, and this holding, when I teach facilitation, I always say you are always your own participant. You are the
mm.
participant that never leaves, that never goes home, right? So, are we always holding space for ourselves as well? Because we all have that. We're complex beings, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So, saying, okay, I hear you. You're going to get your turn, but right now we're showing up to hold space in this room and to be in service as a facilitator. And what's my role in that? So I guess that's what I wanted to address, that part of that. That's the accountability for knowing what's going on with me, that not all of my parts are completely in alignment all the time. But can I hold space for that and be gentle with it? And then bring that into the space so that I'm sending out that frequency that vibration. And we're always setting the tone as the facilitator in the room. So how we're treating ourselves is how we show up, and we give permission for other people to do the same.
That's right. And I love this notion of modeling, right? And whether it's like an activity or conversation or prompt, we have to guide folks to that destination, or even to the edge. To take the horse to water, right? And they might drink. And if we take a drink, we've modeled that behavior, right? And so we to your point, we're sending those frequencies so that people can resonate and can mimic and copy. And I think that I love this, like, this notion you were saying, be gentle with it. And if we demonstrate that it's okay, then others can feel safe to do that too. They can feel almost justified and being able to behave that way.
And it's beautiful because we brought up this binary. As a facilitator, my job is to say, hey, I'm drinking this water. It tastes really good. This is a possibility maybe you hadn't thought of, and it's safe. Like, look. And if we, it's got to be okay to not drink the water. It's got to be okay to not drink the water. So as a facilitator, my job is like, hey, look, here's this water. I'm drinking it. What are you going to do with this water? I wonder. And I'm honestly, like, I need to be like, wow, I wonder what my participants are going to do with this water. Because one of them, or maybe several of them, is going to do something I never thought of before. And maybe that's a really good idea. It's like being open to the wonder and the possibility. There's also, I think of it as a privilege, but it's a preference. There's different kinds of workshops, right? There's a workshop where, hey, here's a bunch of water. That's the experiential workshop. And then there's the one where I'm actually teaching people to drink water. You're going to leave this workshop and you're going to know how to drink that water,
Yeah.
But again, it's about consent, because, well, did the people show up saying, I want to learn how to drink water? Or did they show up just to have an experience, or to gain more self-awareness? And again, that's my bias. I really like the workshops where it's like, hey, I wonder how that water is going to feel to all these different people. And they're going to walk away knowing a little more about themselves and the world around them in a way that's empowering, in a way that is going to help them be more self-expressed in the world. Right. In their relating. And it may not be drinking the water. It may be taking a bath. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. I think that's where invention comes from. You mentioned it embraces the possibility. It allows you to remain curious. And I think this, whether you're in a training workshop or in a meeting that just runs every week with your team, that kind of attitude can be really powerful. I think the drill sergeant approach of, here's my agenda and we got to stick to it at all costs, is not super effective. And I get where it comes from, because when there's no agenda and things are too fluid, that's problematic. But I think over structuring and not allowing for emergent qualities is also very stifling.
Yeah. I'm always trying to go for that perfect yin yang balance of structure and flow. And that's probably what keeps me lit up about facilitation, because it really is about having enough structure, boundaries, and so that you can have that flow of creativity and discovery and wonder.
Yeah, I get that question all the time, especially for folks that are doing more, I would say, things that are more on the relating side or the spiritual side of facilitation. Some people surprisingly get very agitated, which, like, it's funny because it's like, I don't feel like agitation is one of your values. So, like, why are you getting so agitated? But around the name control, and especially control the room. And I tell them that without any structure, without any control, we're in chaos.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's to your point, that yin, that yang, and what's just the right amount, and what can be there so that we can let go.
Yeah.
Like, if we have, like, what is it called? The bobsledding, if they didn't have, if it was just like a bobsled in a hill that wouldn't be as fascinating. You know, it would be a completely different, a different kind of scenario, and people might get hurt even, and they
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't get the outcomes they're driving. So, some control. I often tell people about a facilitation I did where um, they needed to plan something. They needed to come together and think about strategy, and there was this training center that they had on campus, and they said, well, let's just use the training center. And it's like, okay, that sounds fine. And so we arrive, and it looked like no one had been in there for, I don't know, months. And the desks and chairs were all piled up in the corner. And, you know, I had to exhibit some control over that situation and lay that room out so that they would be as effective as possible. Now, I also involved everyone because I was like, I didn't want to do all this work.
Of course.
And so I relinquished a lot of control around some of the specifics, but the fact that we made a decision, and I said we need to address this, because in order to do good work, we have to be comfortable and we have to have a space that's conducive. And so I think there's intentional decisions we have to make around where control is going to, and structure is going to serve us, and then where it might get in our way, and let's let go of it.
Yeah, and I think my biggest skill as a facilitator is really understanding that everything contains its opposite. So nothing is only one thing, right? Like when you mentioned the agitation, this person who's agitated, like, why are you agitated? Well, from my point of view, they're agitated because they really care about something, because this is important to them. And so there's that, right? Like we get all, irritated, but it's because we're holding on to something, but we're being irritated. But why are we holding on? Because we have this really soft spot for it, that it's so important.
Someone's attacking a value, right? And then the funny thing is, sometimes that reaction to that attack may even elicit behaviors that aren't even aligned with the value, which is fascinating. So here we have. Go ahead.
I love this question.
Yeah.
Your perspectives on command versus control. And I love this because, as I mentioned, consent is a big thing for me. So the control as structure and as guidance and as, there's somebody here, we're not just in complete chaos, and there's something you can lean back on that's going to hold you as support. And then there's, my word for it is coercion or oppressive. So, drop and get me this, drop and drink that water, or we're going to, and so command is when, and this as a facilitator, it comes down to service, right? Is always knowing that I'm in a role of service. And if there isn't consent, then I'm out of bounds, right? Like if because these are my participants, either they paid to be here or they don't have to stay, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. We all have to be in a collective agreement that this is what we're doing together. So I would say the difference comes down to that collective agreement and consent. And, do we have a shared goal in terms of an agreement about why we're here and what we're doing? Otherwise, I'm just, I don't know what I'm doing.
The consent piece is fascinating because, you could have a scenario, and I say could, I've been in many scenarios where the consent was, we need someone to command us. We go on too many tangents. We need to stay time bound. We have a lot to get done. Can you help us stay on track? And so my job as a facilitator was to say, I think we need to put that in the parking lot and move on. I think we agreed that my job was to bring them back to the agreements because they got too in the weeds as far as their discussions and tangents and whatnot. Yeah. Now, am I going to do that in a training that someone some just diverse group signed up to attend? Probably not. I'm going to be a little more, my style is going to shift, but it comes into those through the consent and the expectations that were set. What were the desires?
Right.
Why was I asked to be there, and can I honor that and be authentic to it?
And so I often refer to my job as a facilitator as I'm directing traffic. Like I said at the beginning, I'm the MC, I'm the ringleader here, or I'm just directing traffic. And these are some of the things I'm going to do. And so I let people know that up front. This is about managing expectations. If I interrupt you, please, we can bookmark it or, parking lot, but we have a certain amount of time. My job, I'm just directing traffic,
Yeah.
so thank you for understanding that. And then people kind of have a context for it. But it's also, consent is a moment by moment, right? We could have an agreement. So I think my job as a facilitator too is to be checking in and being okay, where are we, do we still have the same goal that we had? Because I'm going to respond to this differently. You can change your mind. And then, how's this working? If you get that one participant who decides that they want to take the whole room somewhere else, well, you kind of need to check in with the group, and maybe
That's right.
It doesn't want to be there anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah, how does everyone feel about what just happened? How should we proceed?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
is it still our goal? Because we have lunch scheduled at noon. So are we gonna, or what are we gonna do with this now?
I'm here to serve you. If everyone's enjoying thinking this is the right thing to do, let's do it.
That's what keeps me from being a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm laughing about that, right? We need someone, right, to lead, and we need someone to be controlled. But if it's not in consent, and one of my favorite, when I deal with fear, right, and my insecurities, and part of it is to kind of exaggerate or find the humor in it. And one of my favorite is that there's a famous line from Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, if you remember, where he's like, "You need me on that wall." That line where there's sort of that drill sergeant who's out of control, who's just kind of like, wait a minute.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I kind of, I don't remember the scene, but it's reminiscent of a lot that I've seen. I just think I see the guy that's just like, looks like his head's going to burst, and he's got the little strap on his chin, and he's spitting half his words. And yeah. But we need less of that in facilitation. No more, no whistles for sure. Excellent. Well, we could clearly go on for way longer than we can support here on the live stream. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I really look forward to having you at the Control the Room conference this year, and excited to hear your talk and see your workshop and have you amongst the series of great, awesome facilitators sharing with us this year.
That's entirely mutual. Thank you, Deba. I'm excited to be collaborating. It's great.
Excellent. It was great to see you all, and we'll be back next week.